Well, look who finally decided to contribute something, my mother said as I placed the homemade apple pie on the dining table. The condensation on the wine glasses caught the chandelier light, creating tiny prisms across the white tablecloth. Though I don't know why you bothered when Clara brought that beautiful tiramisu from that fancy bakery downtown. My sister Clara beamed, her surgical residency badge still clipped to her designer blouse. Next to her, my brother Noah adjusted his custom cufflinks, fresh from winning another high-profile case that morning. "It's the thought that counts, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I wanted to make something special for Dad's birthday." "Oh, honey," Dad chuckled, not unkindly but with that familiar note of pity that made my stomach clench. "Special is what your siblings bring to this family. You bring persistence." The table erupted in laughter, all except me. "Speaking of persistence," my mother continued, refilling everyone's wine glass except mine, "Clara just got offered chief resident position, and Noah's being considered for junior partner." "That's amazing," I said genuinely. "And what about you, sweetheart?" Dad turned to me, his expression already prepared for disappointment. "Still at that. What is it again? Office building downtown?" "Geospan International," I supplied, knowing he wouldn't remember it by next Sunday. Right. Still answering phones or whatever it is. I'm in operations management now, actually," I said quietly. Clara snorted into her wine. "Is that what they call filing these days?" Noah joined in. "Hey, not everyone can handle the pressure of real responsibility. Someone's got to keep the coffee fresh." My mother patted my hand. "There's nothing wrong with simple work, dear. We can't all be achievers." I stared at my untouched pie as they moved on to discussing Noah's latest courtroom triumph. 7 years at the company, and they still introduced me at family functions as our daughter who works in an office somewhere. 7 years of building something extraordinary that none of them could comprehend because they'd never bothered to ask. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. "Are we expecting someone else?" my father asked, checking his watch. "I invited my boss," I said, standing up. "You always say I should bring someone from work." My mother's eyes lit up. "Your supervisor is here? Why didn't you tell me? I would have made the good salmon." As I walked to the front door, I heard my father whisper loudly, "Maybe this supervisor can tell us what she actually does all day." I opened the door, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "Ready for this?" he asked quietly. I nodded. They've been ready for 7 years. They just didn't know it. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to thank everyone listening to this story. If you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Your comments mean everything to me, so let me know what you think as we dive deeper into what happened that night. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. My name is Maeve Riley, and until that night, I had been invisible to my own family. Not physically invisible, of course. They saw me at every excruciating Sunday dinner, but invisible in all the ways that mattered. I was 32 years old with a degree in international business that my parents had reluctantly helped pay for, convinced I'd never use it for anything substantial. I lived in a modest apartment downtown, drove a reliable but unimpressive car, and wore clothes that prioritized comfort over brand names. What my family didn't know, what I had been contractually prevented from telling them, was that 7 years ago when I started as an entry-level analyst at Geospan International, I had caught the attention of its founder, Walter Barnes. Walter was in his 70s then, a brilliant but eccentric businessman who had built Geospan from nothing into a global logistics powerhouse. 3 months into my employment, I had noticed a critical flaw in their Asia-Pacific shipping routes that was costing the company millions. Instead of submitting my analysis through normal channels, I stayed late one night and refined my findings into a comprehensive proposal. The next morning, I found Walter Barnes himself sitting at my desk, reading my report. "You wrote this?" he asked, not looking up. "Yes, sir. You're new." 3 months, I confirmed. He finally looked at me, his eyes calculating behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Do you know how many people have worked here for decades and never noticed this problem?" I didn't answer. "Come to my office at 7 tonight," he said, standing up, "and bring more ideas." That night began my unofficial apprenticeship. Walter kept me in the shadows, testing me with increasingly complex problems. I streamlined operations, revamped outdated systems, and developed innovative solutions that increased profitability by 38% within the first year. When Walter announced his retirement 2 years later, the board expected him to name his son or perhaps the CFO as his successor. Instead, he called me into a private meeting. I'm naming you as CEO, he said without preamble. I nearly fell out of my chair. Sir, there are dozens of more qualified. No, he cut me off. There's not, but there's a condition. The condition was secrecy. For at least 5 years, I would lead the company from behind a veil. My name would appear on documents as M. Riley, Operations Director, while I actually ran everything. Walter believed the board and industry weren't ready for someone like me, young, female, without an Ivy League pedigree. Let your results speak first, he advised. By the time they realize who's really in charge, your success will make it impossible for them to object. So I became the phantom CEO. In meetings, I sat quietly while others presented my ideas. I transformed the company from a traditional logistics operation into a technology-forward powerhouse. Revenue tripled. Our workforce grew from 3,000 to 15,000. And through it all, I told no one. Not my friends, not my siblings, and especially not my parents, who continued to see me as their underachieving daughter. Every Sunday, I sat through their dismissive comments and backhanded compliments. Each time Clara described a complex surgery or Noah detailed a legal strategy, my parents would beam with pride. Then they'd turn to me with those pitying smiles. And how's your little job going, dear? 5 years stretched to 7 as I navigated a merger that would make Geospan the largest company of its kind in the hemisphere. The day the deal closed, Walter called me. It's time, he said simply. The transition happened quickly. At a board meeting, Walter announced his final act would be revealing the true identity of the company's leadership. Confusion turned to shock as he explained that for years, I had been the one making every major decision. The stock jumped 12 points that day. Industry publications ran headlines like "The Phantom CEO Revealed" and "Geospan's Secret Weapon Unveiled." My photograph appeared in business magazines. I was invited to speak at conferences and universities. And still, my family never noticed because they never looked at the business section, never Googled my name, never asked about my work beyond the most superficial questions, until the night I opened the door and introduced Theodore Maxwell, the renowned business journalist, to my stunned family. Everyone, this is Theo Maxwell. He's doing a feature on Geospan for International Business Monthly. My father's practiced host smile faltered. My mother dropped the serving spoon she was holding. Maxwell? The Theo Maxwell? Noah asked, instantly recognizing the name that appeared on the business profiles he pretended to read. Theo smiled warmly and extended his hand to my father. It's a pleasure to meet Maeve's family. She's become something of a legend in our industry. Our Maeve? My mother asked, looking between us. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Theo said, accepting the seat I offered him. Your daughter has revolutionized global logistics. That's why I'm profiling her as our Executive of the Year. The silence around the table was deafening. My father cleared his throat. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maeve works at a desk job. She's not, Dad, I interrupted gently. I'm the CEO of Geospan International. Clara laughed nervously. That's not possible. Geospan is enormous. They're worth billions. 18.7 billion after the Astor merger last month. Theo supplied helpfully, which Maeve orchestrated, by the way. Masterfully done. My mother's hand flew to her throat. But you never said anything. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. The room felt as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. My father's face had gone pale, his fork suspended midway to his mouth. Clara's perfect posture had crumbled as she slumped against her chair. Noah kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. I don't understand, my mother finally whispered. How is this possible? Theo glanced at me, silently asking permission to continue. I nodded slightly. Maeve was personally selected by Walter Barnes to succeed him, Theo explained, helping himself to the food my mother had robotically passed him. It's actually an extraordinary story. For 5 years, she ran the entire operation while maintaining a public facade as a mid-level manager. 5 years? My father echoed, his voice hollow. 7 now, I corrected gently. The board only learned my true position 2 years ago. Noah's legal mind seemed to click back into gear. That's insane. Why would anyone agree to that arrangement? Because Walter believed the company wasn't ready for someone like me, I said, finally cutting into my untouched dinner. He wanted my results to speak for themselves before revealing who was behind them. And speak they did, Theo added enthusiastically. Geospan's market value has quadrupled under her leadership. They've expanded into 17 new countries and revolutionized supply chain technology. It's why she's our cover story next month. Clara, always competitive, narrowed her eyes. If you're so important, why do you still drive that old car? Why don't you live in a mansion? I smiled. I invest most of what I earn back into employee development programs. Though I did buy a cabin in the mountains last year. It's quiet there. My mother suddenly stood up, nearly knocking over her chair. I need to check on dessert, she announced, though dessert was already on the table. She practically ran to the kitchen. My father watched her go, then turned to me with a strange expression, something between anger and confusion. Why keep this from us? Your own family? The question hung in the air. Theo shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware he was witnessing something intensely personal. Maybe I should give you all a moment, he suggested. No, I said firmly. You're here to tell my story, Theo. This is part of it. I turned back to my father. I tried telling you, Dad. The first year, I mentioned 3 times that I had been promoted. Each time you changed the subject to Clara's medical school achievements. The second year, I brought home a company award. You used it as a coaster, Noah snorted, then quickly disguised it as a cough when our father glared at him. After a while, it just seemed easier to let you all believe what you wanted to believe. I continued. You had decided who I was a long time ago, and nothing I said was going to change that. My mother returned from the kitchen, her eyes red-rimmed but her smile firmly fixed back in place. So, she said with forced brightness, our Maeve is some kind of important businesswoman. How wonderful. Why, we always knew you had potential, didn't we, dear? She nudged my father. Of course, he agreed quickly. Always said you were smart as a whip. The blatant revision of history made my throat tighten. 7 years of dismissal, of condescension, of being the family disappointment, and now they were pretending they had supported me all along. Actually, Theo interjected, his journalist's instinct for truth apparently overriding his social graces. Maeve told me her family thought she was wasting her potential. It's part of what drove her, proving them wrong. A painful silence descended. Clara stared intensely at her plate. Noah suddenly became fascinated with his water glass. My parents exchanged panicked glances. Well, my father finally said, forcing a laugh. Families tease. It's what we do. Maeve always knew we were just having fun. I set down my fork with deliberate care. Did I? The atmosphere in the room shifted again. Theo, to his credit, recognized the tension and smoothly changed the subject. Maeve, tell them about the Patterson contract. That was brilliant strategy. Grateful for the lifeline, I launched into an explanation of a complex negotiation I'd handled the previous year. As I spoke, I watched my family's expressions transform. My parents' eyes widened with each figure I mentioned. Noah leaned forward, suddenly interested in my words. Clara's face tightened with what looked suspiciously like jealousy. By the time dessert was served, they were hanging on my every word. My father, who had never asked me a single question about my work in 7 years, now couldn't stop asking about market projections and expansion plans. So what's your annual salary? Clara finally blurted out, unable to contain herself any longer. I smiled. That's private, but let's just say I'm comfortable. More than a surgeon? She pressed. Clara, my mother hissed, mortified. It's a fair question, I said. Yes, Clara. Significantly more than a surgeon, even a chief resident. Her face flushed red. Noah let out a low whistle. But money isn't everything, I added quickly. Your work saves lives. That's immeasurable. She didn't look comforted. As the evening progressed, I watched a painful realization dawn across my family's faces. They had been wrong. Catastrophically, embarrassingly wrong. For years, they had dismissed me, belittled me, written me off as the family underachiever. And all that time, I had been quietly building an empire. When Theo excused himself to take a phone call, my mother seized the opportunity to pull me aside in the kitchen. Darling, she whispered urgently, squeezing my arm. Why didn't you tell us? We would have been so proud. The sincerity in her voice almost broke me. Almost. Would you, Mom? Because when I told you I was handling international accounts 3 years ago, you said it was cute that my company let me play with the grown-ups. She flinched. I never said that. Christmas dinner, 2019. Right before you asked Clara to explain brain surgery to the neighbors again. My mother's face crumpled. We didn't know. You didn't ask. I corrected gently. There's a difference. Back at the table, my father had cornered Theo and was speaking animatedly. As I approached, I caught fragments. Always knew she had it in her. encouraged her business degree. Family of achievers. Theo caught my eye over my father's shoulder, his expression a mixture of amusement and disbelief. Mr. Riley was just telling me how supportive your family has been of your career, Theo said, his tone neutral but his eyes questioning. Is that right? I replied, keeping my voice light. My father turned to me, his expression earnest. Absolutely. We always believed in you, Pumpkin. Remember how I helped you with those business school applications? What I remembered was him asking why I was wasting money on business school when I didn't have the personality for corporate leadership. What I remembered was him suggesting community college instead. I remember, I said simply. As the evening wound down, I noticed my siblings huddled near the front door, whispering intensely. They separated quickly when I approached. Great night, Noah said too brightly. Really eye-opening, Clara nodded stiffly. Congratulations on your success. Their words were right, but something in their tone set off warning bells. I'd spent too many years in corporate negotiations not to recognize when someone was plotting something. Thank you, I said cautiously. It means a lot coming from both of you. As we said our goodbyes, my father pulled me into an unusually tight hug. We need to talk more about your company, he said. I have some ideas that might help you. And your Uncle Gordon is looking for investors for his new venture. I told him my successful daughter might be interested. Ah, there it was. I'll keep that in mind, I said noncommittally. My mother kissed my cheek. Next week, you must bring some of your important colleagues. I'll make my special lamb roast. Actually, I said, I'll be in Singapore next week. Board meeting. The disappointment on her face was tinged with something new. Respect. As Theo and I walked to our cars, he shook his head in wonder. That was educational. They really had no idea? None, I confirmed. They never thought to look. And now? I glanced back at the house, where my family was still visible through the window, huddled together in what appeared to be an intense discussion. Now they'll never see anything else. What I didn't tell Theo was that the evening had unfolded exactly as I had anticipated. The shock, the disbelief, the rapid recalibration of their perception of me, it was all part of a plan that had been brewing for years. A plan that was only beginning to unfold. What I couldn't have predicted was the text message that lit up my phone as we reached our cars. Family emergency meeting called for tomorrow. Topic: how to leverage Maeve's position. Dad says to keep it quiet from you. Thought you should know. Noah. I stared at the screen, an icy feeling spreading through my chest. So that's how it would be. My revealed success wasn't a cause for genuine pride. It was an opportunity to be exploited. Everything okay? Theo asked, noting my expression. I smiled tightly. Everything's perfect. In fact, I think I'd like to expand the scope of our interview. There's much more to this story than I initially shared. Theo raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. It's about family, I said. And what happens when they discover the person they've been stepping on has quietly risen above them all. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I sat in my corner office on the 37th floor, watching the city come alive below, while my phone buzzed incessantly with messages from my family. Just checking in on my successful daughter. Dad, lunch this week? So much to catch up on. Mom, hey sis, need advice on investment opportunities. Noah, can you introduce me to any hospital board members? Clara. I set the phone face down on my desk and turned to the window. The betrayal shouldn't have hurt, I'd expected it after all. But somewhere deep inside, a childish part of me had hoped their shock might transform into genuine pride. Not this transparent attempt to cash in on my position. My assistant Yasmin knocked softly before entering with my morning coffee. The board reports are ready for review, and Mr. Maxwell is here for your follow-up interview. Thank you. Send him in. Theo entered, looking considerably more casual than he had at my parents' dinner party. He whistled appreciatively at the view. Nice digs. Very different from the cubicle farm you described starting in. I gestured for him to sit. 7 years is a long time. He pulled out his recorder. So, you wanted to expand our discussion? Yes. I took a steadying breath. I want to talk about what happens after the revelation, when the family that never believed in you suddenly wants a piece of what you've built. Theo's eyes lit with journalistic interest. Your family's already making moves? I showed him Noah's text from the night before. His eyebrows shot up. Family emergency meeting? That's something. Indeed, I sipped my coffee. What they don't realize is that I've been prepared for this moment for years. How so? I smiled. That's what I want to share. Over the next hour, I detailed my family's history of dismissing my achievements while elevating my siblings. how every milestone in my career had been minimized or ignored, how I'd stopped trying to impress them years ago and instead channeled that energy into building something they couldn't ignore. So the dinner reveal, that was deliberate? Theo asked. Every second, I confirmed. The timing, the witness, all of it. And what happens next? My phone buzzed again. Clara this time. Dad says you're not responding. We're all meeting at their house at 3. Really need you there. Important family matters to discuss. I showed Theo the message. Next is I attend their meeting and hear exactly what they have planned. Mind if I tag along? Off the record, of course. I considered his request. Having a witness might be useful. Actually, I'd prefer it be on the record. His eyes widened. Are you sure? Absolutely. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. This is part of the story too. At precisely 3 o'clock, I pulled into my parents' driveway with Theo beside me. My family's cars were already there, plus one I didn't recognize, a sleek black Mercedes with dealership plates. Expecting someone else? Theo asked. Apparently so. We rang the doorbell, and my mother answered, her smile faltering when she saw Theo. Maeve, darling, we weren't expecting company. Theo's with me for the day. Professional shadowing. I stepped past her into the living room, where I found my father, siblings, and an unfamiliar man in an expensive suit arranged like a war council. My father stood quickly. Pumpkin, there you are. This is Harrison Wells, a business associate of mine. The man extended his hand. Miss Riley, your father has told me remarkable things about you and your company. I shook his hand while examining him carefully. Interesting, considering my father only learned what company I run yesterday. An awkward silence fell. Harrison cleared his throat. Well, recent information then. Nonetheless, I believe we have a mutually beneficial opportunity to discuss. I sat down, gesturing for Theo to join me. I'm listening. My father took control, his car salesman charm in full force. Harrison runs Wells Financial Group. They're looking to expand their corporate client portfolio, and I mentioned that perhaps Geospan might be in the market for new financial services. We're very satisfied with our current financial partners, I replied. But surely you'd want to keep important contracts in the family circle, my mother interjected. Harrison is practically family. He and your father go way back. I turned to Harrison. How long have you been in business, Mr. Wells? He puffed up. 15 years this October. And your client list? Several mid-sized regional businesses. Your company would be our largest client by far, which means we'd give you our utmost attention. Translation. They had no experience handling accounts of Geospan's size and complexity. I smiled politely. I appreciate the offer, but we require partners with global capabilities and experience managing international portfolios. My father leaned forward. Maeve, this is a chance to help family. Harrison's company would grow with your business. Dad's invested quite heavily with them, Clara added meaningfully. Ah, now I understood. My father had money tied up in this small financial firm and was hoping to secure them a massive client to boost their prospects and his investment. I'm afraid corporate partnerships require board approval and extensive vetting, I explained. It's not something I can decide over coffee. Harrison's smile tightened. Of course. Perhaps I could submit a formal proposal? You're welcome to send it to our procurement department. I handed him a business card with our general inquiry email address. My father's face darkened. Procurement? Maeve, surely you can do better than that. Put in a good word with your board. That would be unethical, Dad. Noah jumped in. Speaking of your board, I've been thinking it might be time for me to explore corporate law. Geospan must need good attorneys. We have an entire legal department, plus outside counsel. Yes, but family you can trust, my mother said, patting Noah's hand. That's invaluable. Clara, not to be outdone, added, and I've been considering hospital administration long-term. Any healthcare initiatives at your company I might consult on? I looked around at their eager faces, all suddenly interested in my career, after years of dismissal. The familiar feeling of invisibility was gone, replaced by something almost worse, being seen only as a resource to be mined. Theo scribbled notes beside me, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes missing nothing. I need to be clear, I said finally. Geospan isn't a family business. We have processes for hiring, contracting, and partnerships that can't be circumvented because of personal connections. My father's facade cracked. After everything we've done for you, the education we helped pay for, the support we've given? Support? I repeated incredulously. We've always supported you, my mother insisted. We may not have understood your work, but we've always wanted the best for you. I looked at Theo. Are you getting this? He nodded, still writing. Getting what? My father demanded. What exactly is he writing? My story, I said simply. The complete version. Clara's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? It means I'm documenting how my family, who for 7 years treated me like an underachiever, is now suddenly interested in what I can do for them. That's not fair, Noah protested. We're just proud of you and want to be involved in your life. Involved in my company, you mean? Same thing, isn't it? My father said dismissively. Family helps family. That's how the world works. I stood up, suddenly tired of the charade. I need some air. Excuse me. Outside on the porch, I breathed deeply, trying to calm the anger and disappointment swirling inside me. I heard the door open behind me and turned, expecting Theo, but found Noah instead. That was pretty harsh in there, he said, leaning against the railing beside me. Was it? He sighed. Look, I get it. We underestimated you. But can you blame us? You never exactly screamed future CEO growing up. And Clara screamed future surgeon when she fainted at the sight of blood in 10th grade? That's different. She overcame that. And you don't think I overcame anything? The shyness? The anxiety? The constant comparison to my superior siblings? Noah had the grace to look uncomfortable. I never thought of it that way. No one in this family ever did. I turned to face him directly. That text you sent me last night, why did you do it? He shrugged. Seemed like you should know what they were planning. But you still came today. Still asked about jobs at my company. Can you blame me for trying? My firm is laying people off and suddenly my little sister runs a billion-dollar company. What would you do? I studied him. Of all my family members, Noah had been the least dismissive over the years. Not supportive, exactly, but not as actively condescending as the others. I'd have trusted that if my sibling thought I deserved an opportunity, they'd offer it without me having to scheme for it. Something shifted in his expression. Fair enough. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I am genuinely impressed with what you've accomplished. Not just the position, but keeping it quiet all these years. That took serious restraint. Thank you, I said, surprised by his sincerity. They're not going to stop, you know, he added, nodding toward the house. Dad's in financial trouble, bad investments, and Clara's in debt up to her eyeballs from medical school. They see you as the solution. I absorbed this new information. And you? Me? He smiled ruefully. I'm just the messenger. Always have been. When we returned inside, the atmosphere had shifted. My parents were huddled with Harrison, speaking in urgent whispers that stopped abruptly when we entered. Clara sat apart, aggressively typing on her phone. Everything okay? I asked. Wonderful, my mother said with brittle brightness. We were just discussing how we might celebrate your success. A family vacation, perhaps? Your father was thinking about that resort in Cabo you could probably get us into. I glanced at Noah, who raised his eyebrows in an I told you so expression. Actually, I said, I wanted to discuss something important with all of you. They perked up immediately. I've been thinking about family legacy, I continued, about what we leave behind and how we're remembered. My father nodded eagerly. Exactly. Creating a dynasty. That's what I've always wanted for this family. I was thinking more about truth and accountability, I countered, about acknowledging our past actions and their impact. My mother's smile faltered. What do you mean, dear? I turned to Theo. This is where that expanded story comes in. Back to my family. I've authorized Theo to include my full family background in his profile of me. What background? Clara asked suspiciously. The real one. How you all treated me for years. The dismissal, the condescension, the constant comparison. How none of you bothered to learn what I actually did until it benefited you to know. My father stood up abruptly. Now wait just a minute. You can't air family business like that. I'm not asking permission, Dad. I'm informing you. This is how you repay us? By embarrassing us publicly? My mother's voice trembled. It's not about embarrassment. It's about truth. About showing other overlooked people that success doesn't require family validation. Clara scoffed. So dramatic. No one's going to care about our family dynamics in a business article. They might care more than you think, Theo interjected. Family, related content consistently outperforms purely business content in our readership metrics. The color drained from my father's face. All my business associates read that magazine. Yes, I said quietly, they do. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. My family's social standing, my father's business reputation, Clara's professional image, all would be affected by the truth being published. You can't do this, my mother whispered. I already have. I stood up, gathering my things. The article runs next month. I wanted you to hear it from me first. As I headed for the door, Harrison awkwardly excused himself, clearly eager to escape the family drama. My father followed me outside, his earlier charm replaced by barely controlled anger. After everything we've done for you, he hissed, this is how you treat your family? I turned to face him. That's exactly the point, Dad. What have you done for me? Really? We raised you. We put you through college. You raised me to believe I was less than my siblings. You agreed to help with college only after I got a scholarship that covered most of it. And for the past 7 years, you've treated my career like it was a hobby to be tolerated. That's not true. It is true. And you know what's worse? Even now, you're not proud of me. You're not impressed by what I've accomplished. You're just calculating how to benefit from it. He fell silent, unable to deny the accusation. The article isn't about embarrassing you, I continued more gently. It's about being honest. About showing that success doesn't always look the way people expect, and that sometimes the person everyone underestimates is quietly building something extraordinary. And what about family loyalty? He demanded. Loyalty goes both ways, Dad. As Theo and I drove away, he let out a long, low whistle. That was intense. You okay? I was surprised to find that I was. The weight of 7 years of silence, of swallowing their dismissal, had lifted. Whatever happened next, the truth would be known. I'm fine, I assured him. This is just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, my family cycled through various strategies to prevent the article's publication. First came anger, furious calls and texts accusing me of betrayal. When that didn't work, they tried guilt. My mother tearfully recounting all she'd sacrificed for me over the years. Finally came negotiation, offers to publicly praise me if I'd soften the family portions of the article. Through it all, I remained firm. The truth would stand. The night before the magazine was set to go to print, I received a call from Noah. They're desperate, he said without preamble. Dad's calling in favors, trying to reach the magazine's publisher. It won't work, I replied calmly. The publisher is a woman I mentored 5 years ago. He laughed quietly. You really did think of everything. Not everything, just enough. There was a pause. For what it's worth, I get it now. Why you're doing this. Do you? Yeah, it's not about hurting them. It's about finally being seen. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, looking at old family photos. Pictures of birthdays where my siblings got elaborate celebrations while mine were afterthoughts. Holiday gatherings where I sat on the periphery while Clara and Noah held court. Years of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. Tomorrow, that would end forever. The magazine hit newsstands on a Tuesday. My face on the cover, alongside the headline, The Invisible CEO, How Maeve Riley Quietly Built an Empire While Her Family Thought She Was Just Pushing Papers. Inside, Theo had crafted a masterful narrative. My professional achievements were detailed extensively, but woven throughout was the story of a family who failed to see what was right in front of them. He quoted my parents' dismissive comments, included anecdotes from those painful Sunday dinners, and contrasted their perception with the reality of what I was building. The article concluded with a section about that fateful dinner party and its aftermath, including my family's immediate pivot to trying to capitalize on my position. Their naked opportunism, laid bare for all to see. By noon, my phone was exploding with notifications. Industry colleagues, former classmates, distant relatives, all expressing variations of shock, admiration, and disbelief. My parents' phones, I imagined, were equally active, though for very different reasons. At precisely 1 o'clock, as scheduled weeks before, I took the podium at Geospan's annual shareholder meeting. Today, I began, I want to announce a new initiative that's deeply personal to me. The room fell silent, investors leaning forward in anticipation. For too long, talent has been overlooked because it didn't come in expected packages or follow traditional paths. Today, Geospan is launching the Visibility Project, a $50 million commitment to identifying and supporting overlooked talent within our organization and beyond. Applause rippled through the audience. The cornerstone of this initiative will be the Recognition Scholarship, full college funding for employees' children who demonstrate potential, but may be overshadowed by siblings or peers. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room is building the most remarkable future. As I detailed the initiative, I could see understanding dawning on the faces of those who had read the morning's article. This wasn't just a corporate program, it was my response to my own experience, my way of ensuring others wouldn't endure what I had. That evening, as I prepared for an interview about the new initiative, my assistant informed me my parents were in the lobby, insisting on seeing me. "Send them up," I said, steeling myself. They entered my office like chastened children, their usual confidence evaporated. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, my father's shoulders slumped. "That article," my mother began, her voice trembling. "Everyone's read it, everyone." "That was the point," I replied calmly. "Your uncle won't even take my calls," my father said. "My golf buddies are suddenly too busy to play. Do you have any idea what you've done to our standing in the community?" I told the truth, Dad. That's all. "And this scholarship thing? That's just to rub it in, isn't it?" I sighed. "No, it's to ensure other overlooked people get the support I never did." My mother sank into a chair. "What do you want from us, Maeve? An apology? Fine. We're sorry. We didn't see your potential. We were wrong. Is that enough?" "This isn't about an apology," I said gently. "It's about consequences. For years, your words and actions had consequences for me, how I saw myself, how I navigated the world. Now your dismissal has consequences for you." "So that's it?" my father demanded. "You've had your revenge, ruined our reputation, and now we're just supposed to accept it?" I studied them both, these people who had shaped me in ways both painful and profound, who had never seen me, not really, until it was too late. "No," I said finally. "Now you have a choice." I outlined the conditions clearly. If they wanted to rebuild our relationship, they would volunteer with the Visibility Project, working directly with overlooked young professionals. They would attend therapy, both family sessions with me and individual counseling to address their patterns of favoritism and conditional love. And they would make public amends, not through hollow apologies, but through demonstrable changes in behavior. "And if we refuse?" my father asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "Then you'll continue experiencing the natural consequences of having your true behavior exposed. People will know exactly who you are and how you treated your own daughter. Some may forgive that, many won't." As they left, visibly shaken by the choice before them, my assistant handed me a note that had been delivered by courier. "I was wrong. You were extraordinary all along. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'm here. No schemes, no requests, just your brother who missed seeing who you really were, Noah." I folded the note carefully and placed it in my desk. Perhaps there was hope for one relationship at least. That night, as I stood at my office window overlooking the city lights, I felt no triumph, no vindictive satisfaction, just peace. The truth was out. The invisible had become visible. The overlooked had been seen. My revenge wasn't destroying my family. It was ensuring they could never again pretend I was less than I am. It was forcing them to see, truly see, the daughter they had dismissed for so long. And it was creating a legacy that would help others like me rise without having to hide in the shadows. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't what you take from others, it's what you build for yourself and those who will come after you. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Maybe you've felt invisible too. Maybe you've had people underestimate you, dismiss you, fail to see your potential. If so, I hope this reminds you that your worth isn't determined by others' ability to recognize it. Your value exists whether they see it or not. And someday, when you've built something they can't ignore, the look on their faces will be worth every moment they looked past you. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know if any part of this resonated with you. And if you want more stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the quietest voices have the most powerful stories to tell.